All right, so you want to get better at negotiating, huh? Well, I think you came to the right place.
I think so, too.
Because today we are going like deep into the world of negotiation.
Yeah.
Like high-stakes negotiation. And to guide us, we have no better person than a former FBI hostage negotiator.
That's right. We're going to be taking some of the key insights from Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference.
Yeah, and you sent over some excerpts.
All right.
And let me tell you, this is not your typical like win-win negotiation advice.
No.
Voss really flips the script on a lot of the conventional wisdom.
Yeah, and he's coming at it from a very different perspective.
Yeah.
Having that experience talking down hostage takers.
Exactly. And he makes this point really clear in a story from his time at Harvard Law School.
Oh, yeah.
He participated in this negotiation exercise where he actually ended up being kidnapped.
By professors.
By the professors. It's crazy.
It's an incredible story.
Yeah.
I mean, it really highlights the limitations of relying solely on logic. Voss, with his FBI training, he was ready for that emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
But the professors, not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
And his point, I think, is clear. We need a different set of tools when we step into a negotiation.
We do.
Tools that acknowledge the messy reality of,
Human emotion.
human emotions,
Biases.
bases, and even our occasional irrationality.
Absolutely.
And this brings us to one of Voss's most counterintuitive but powerful concepts.
Oh, yeah.
The power of no in a negotiation.
The power of no.
Now, most of us see no as like a roadblock, like the opposite of what we're going for in negotiation. But Voss argues that embracing no can actually unlock a deeper, more authentic conversation.
I love that.
Yeah.
Think about it. When we feel pressured to say yes right away,
Right.
we often end up with agreements that don't actually address everyone's needs.
Right.
It's like slapping a Band-Aid on a much deeper issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Voss has this really great personal story about his own journey to becoming a hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
And he was told no repeatedly by the FBI.
Yeah.
But he actually used those rejections to fuel his determination.
Right. It reflects perfectly his philosophy.
Yeah.
Those initial roadblocks, those no's, they're not the end. They're an opportunity to understand the power dynamics at play and use that knowledge to find a better path forward.
It's like saying, okay, I hear that you're not on board yet.
Right.
But let's explore why and
Right.
see if we can bridge that gap.
Yeah. And that's where this idea of tactical empathy comes in.
Ooh, tactical empathy. I like it.
Yeah. So it's about going beyond active listening
Okay.
and understanding the other person's perspective in a way that allows you to guide the conversation strategically.
So it's not about being a pushover or getting lost in their emotions.
No.
It's about using empathy as a tool to gather information, build rapport, and ultimately influence the outcome.
That's right. And to do that, Voss provides some very specific techniques,
Okay.
like mirroring labeling and calibrated questions.
Ooh. Okay, let's unpack these a little bit.
Yeah.
What is mirroring?
So mirroring is incredibly simple,
Okay.
but effective.
Okay.
You literally repeat the last few words of what someone has said.
Oh, interesting.
And the fascinating thing about mirroring is that it taps into this natural human instinct.
Okay.
It triggers this desire in the other person to elaborate,
Okay.
to connect,
Yeah.
because they feel heard and understood.
That makes sense.
Voss mentions a study
Okay.
with waiters.
Uh-huh.
Those waiters who use mirroring receive significantly higher tips
Really?
compared to those who just use positive reinforcement.
Wow.
So who knew repeating someone's words could be so profitable?
Right.
But it really highlights how
Yeah.
mirroring, even in these small, subtle ways, builds rapport and trust and just paves the way for a smoother interaction.
And then there's that story of Bobby the bank robber.
Oh, yeah.
Where Voss was able to use mirroring to de-escalate a very tense hostage situation and convince Bobby to surrender peacefully.
Such a powerful example of how mirroring can work even in incredibly high-stakes situations.
Yeah.
By simply reflecting Bobby's words.
Yeah.
Voss was able to create this connection and ultimately influence his behavior.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've got mirroring down. What about labeling? How does that work?
Okay, so labeling involves giving a name to the other person's emotion.
Okay.
So you might say things like, it seems like you're feeling frustrated, or it sounds like you're concerned about this.
So you're acknowledging their emotional reality,
Yeah,
validating their feelings without necessarily agreeing with them.
exactly. And this validation, it just builds trust,
Right.
creates a sense of understanding.
Yeah.
And it shows that you're not just listening to their words, but you're also recognizing the emotions behind them.
Yeah, Voss shares a story about how Labeling helped de-escalate a potential conflict between a student and her boss.
Oh, right.
Over a request for copies. The student was feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
And by simply labeling that feeling, she was able to open up a dialogue and find a more manageable solution.
It's a great example of how labeling can just kind of diffuse a tense situation by bringing those underlying emotions to the surface.
Okay, and then there's this third technique, calibrated questions.
Yes.
What are those?
So calibrated questions, they often start with how or what.
Okay.
And they're designed to guide the other person towards a solution that they feel ownership of.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's kind of like subtly shifting the power dynamic in the negotiation.
Yes.
Instead of dictating terms, you're inviting the other person to problem solve with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's this story about a guy named TJ who successfully collected overdue ticket payments for the Giants by using calibrated questions to focus on the fans' needs and circumstances.
Interesting.
Rather than simply demanding payment.
Okay.
So it illustrates how framing your request as questions can actually encourage collaboration and lead to better outcomes for everyone.
And then there's that story about the airline check-in where Voss's student was trying to get on this overbooked flight.
Yeah.
And by using calibrated questions, he was able to get the gate agent to offer him a seat in Economy Plus.
Economy Plus. Amazing, right?
Yeah.
It shows how calibrated questions can uncover these hidden options and these possibilities. By encouraging the other person to think about how to solve the problem, you might be surprised at the creative solutions they come up with.
So these three techniques, mirroring, labeling, and calibrated questions, they form the foundation of Voss's approach to tactical empathy.
Yes.
But he doesn't stop there. He introduces this concept called black swans.
Black swans.
Which are basically these unknown unknowns that can completely change the game in a negotiation.
Absolutely. And it raises a question for us.
Okay.
How do we prepare for the unexpected when we don't even know what to expect?
Yeah, good question.
Right.
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do we prepare for these things? Voss says we need to shift our mindset. Instead of fixating on what we think we know, we need to become more attuned to those things that don't quite add up. The seemingly irrational behaviors, offhand comments, those are often clues to these hidden needs and desires.
Yeah, he actually gives this really heartbreaking example of a hostage situation where the hostage taker did something completely unexpected, defying all the typical patterns, and tragically a hostage was killed because the negotiators missed some key information about his motives.
Right. It really shows how important it is to look beyond the surface, to actively seek those black swans lurking beneath the obvious.
Yeah, Voss contrasts this with a story about a drug dealer kidnapping, where the negotiators accidentally asked this proof-of-life question, and it unintentionally gave them a huge advantage.
Wow.
They weren't even looking for a black swan, but by paying attention to this unexpected response, they gained this leverage.
It just goes to show that, preparation is essential, but also flexibility and openness to new information. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from those moments where things don't go according to plan.
So we need to be ready for those curveballs, to see those seemingly insignificant details as potential game changers.
Absolutely. And this leads us to another crucial insight from Voss.
Yeah, okay.
Leverage isn't always about objective power.
Okay.
It's about understanding what the other party wants, their needs, fears, even their unspoken constraints.
He encourages us to look for those black swans that reveal these hidden leverage points.
Right.
The things that might seem small at first, but can completely shift the balance of the negotiation.
Exactly. There's this great story about a student who was negotiating a new job with his former boss. On the surface, he had very little leverage. But by uncovering his boss's unstated need for an ally within the company, he was able to secure the job.
It's like he found that pressure point, that black swan that changed the whole dynamic.
Exactly. Voss also introduces this concept of normative leverage.
Okay, normative leverage. What is that?
So this is about using the other party's own standards and values to frame your arguments.
So it's not about imposing your own values, but appealing to their existing sense of what's right and fair.
Precisely. And he uses this really great example of a real estate negotiation where a student was able to uncover the seller's cap rate expectations by simply asking the broker,
Oh, interesting.
about his beliefs.
So it's like he used the broker's own religion.
Yes.
Their deeply held beliefs.
Their worldview.
About the market.
Yes.
To guide the negotiation toward a beneficial outcome.
And that brings us to one of the core elements in Voss's approach, knowing their religion.
Knowing their religion. Okay, this sounds really interesting.
So it's not necessarily about religious beliefs.
Okay.
It's about understanding the other party's core values and motivations, their worldview,
right.
their religion.
That's it.
And understanding this can unlock some of the most powerful leverage points, allowing you to find common ground and build trust, even in really challenging negotiations.
So he gives a great example of a hostage situation that involved a tobacco farmer.
Yeah.
And the negotiators realized that his deep distrust of the government was a key factor in his actions.
Absolutely.
So instead of using threats or logic, they appealed to his sense of independence and love for his land.
Right.
And it worked.
It's a beautiful example of how negotiation isn't always about finding a middle ground.
Right.
Sometimes it's about finding those shared values, that deeper connection that allows for a truly collaborative solution.
And this actually ties into what psychologists call the similarity principle.
Right.
The idea that we're more likely to trust and concede to those that we perceive as similar to ourselves.
Exactly.
So it's not about manipulating someone into liking you.
No.
It's about genuinely finding those shared values, that common ground that can build rapport and trust.
Now remember, getting to yes is only half the battle. Voss stresses that a negotiated agreement is only as good as its implementation.
It's not enough to just shake hands and walk away. We need to think about how the agreement will actually play out in the real world.
He tells this really interesting cautionary tale about a prison siege where they had this carefully designed surrender ritual. But an uninformed SWAT officer almost derail the entire thing.
Wow.
So it just goes to show that even when the main players agree, you need to consider everyone involved, every potential roadblock to ensure things go smoothly.
He also shares this personal anecdote about a kidnapping negotiation in the Ecuadorian jungle.
Oh, yeah.
Voss and his team successfully negotiated the hostages' release.
Right.
But they almost couldn't deliver the ransom because of all these unexpected logistical challenges.
Wow. Even after securing the agreement, things can still go wrong. If you haven't thought through the implementation process.
Voss must have some strategies for navigating that.
He does. He stresses the importance of asking how questions throughout the negotiation. Not just to gather information and build rapport, but to ensure that everyone understands and agrees on how the agreement will be implemented.
So we should ask things like, how will we make sure this happens?
Yes.
Or how will we handle potential problems down the line?
Exactly. These how questions can help you uncover potential pitfalls early on. And turn the agreement from this static document into a shared roadmap for success.
It's about turning that what into the how.
Exactly. And this is where things get even more interesting. Because Voss dives into the importance of understanding those who might be influencing the negotiation from behind the scenes. Calls these the level 2 players.
Level 2 players.
They might be stakeholders, decision makers, advisors. Anyone whispering in our counterpart's ear. And understanding their motivations is just as important as understanding our primary counterpart.
So we need to widen our lens and consider the entire ecosystem of the negotiation.
Precisely.
Not just the person sitting across the table from us.
And Voss gives some really practical tips for identifying and influencing these level 2 players. And again, calibrated questions are crucial here.
So we might ask things like, how does this affect the rest of your team?
Yes.
Or what do your colleagues see as their main challenges in this area?
Precisely. By addressing the concerns of these level 2 players, we increase our chances of reaching an agreement that everyone supports. An agreement that actually gets implemented.
Now, Voss also dedicates a section of the book to dealing with difficult personalities.
Yes.
You know, those challenging characters who try to throw us off our game?
Those lovely people.
Yeah, we've all encountered them.
We have.
What's the secret to handling these types?
So Voss argues that the key is to stay calm, focused. And to use those tactical empathy skills to understand their motivations. Because remember, even the most aggressive or deceptive behavior often masks some underlying need or insecurity.
And by understanding those drivers, we can kind of disarm their tactics and steer the conversation in a more productive direction.
He shares this gripping story about a student who was kidnapped by his taxi driver in the Philippines.
Oh, wow.
And the kidnapper was aggressive, manipulative.
Oh, God.
But the student used calibrated questions and other techniques to de-escalate the situation.
Wow.
And secure his release.
That really highlights the power of staying calm and collected under pressure.
Absolutely.
It's like the student used tactical empathy to turn the tables.
Yes.
Gaining control without resorting to any kind of aggression or threats.
Precisely. And sometimes the best way to handle a difficult personality is to simply not engage with their negativity.
So recognize their tactics, label their emotions, and then redirect the conversation toward the issues that matter.
He suggests using phrases like, "It seems like you're really frustrated with this situation," or "It sounds like you're concerned about the potential consequences."
So it's about acknowledging their feelings without getting sucked into their drama.
Exactly.
So you can maintain your own composure.
Right.
And keep the negotiation on track.
But Voss also stresses that we shouldn't be afraid to push back when necessary.
Right.
We need to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And protect our own interests.
So it's not about being a pushover.
No.
It's about knowing when to stand firm.
Yes.
And when to compromise.
He introduces this really interesting technique called punching back.
Punching back.
It's not about physical aggression.
Okay.
It's about using assertive language and strong body language to signal that you're not going to be taken advantage of.
So he suggests phrases like, "That's not going to work for me," or "I need you to reconsider that."
By setting these clear boundaries, you prevent the other party from pushing you beyond your limits.
But doing it in a way that preserves the relationship.
Absolutely. Voss is very clear that it's not about winning at all costs.
Right.
It's about finding a solution that works for both parties.
Right.
While protecting your own interests.
So it's about striking that balance between assertiveness and empathy.
Yes.
Standing your ground while maintaining a positive relationship.
He even encourages us to use tactical empathy when pushing back, to acknowledge the other person's perspective, and to frame our boundaries respectfully. So,
for example, instead of just a flat no,
yeah,
we could say something like, "I understand why you're asking for that, but unfortunately it's not something I'm able to do."
Exactly. Now, to help us navigate these complex interactions, Voss also provides some insights into different bargaining styles.
Oh, interesting.
And how to adapt our approach based on the personality type we're dealing with.
That's fascinating because we've all encountered those different types of negotiators.
We have.
From the super aggressive to the overly agreeable.
Voss identifies 3 main bargaining styles. Analyst, accommodator, and assertive.
Okay, so tell me about these different styles and how we should adjust our approach.
Okay, so analysts are all about logic and data. They're very detail-oriented, methodical, and like to carefully consider every option.
So they're probably the ones who come to the negotiation armed with spreadsheets and charts.
Exactly. When dealing with analysts, be prepared, have your facts straight, and be willing to engage in those detailed discussions.
Appeal to their sense of logic and reason.
Now, accommodators, on the other hand, are all about relationships. They value harmony and connection. And they're often willing to compromise to maintain a positive atmosphere.
So they're the yes people.
Yes.
Eager to please and keep things running smoothly.
Right. When negotiating with accommodators, focus on building rapport. Emphasizing collaboration. And being sensitive to their need for consensus.
Make them feel like your partners, not adversaries.
No, assertives are all about getting their way. They're confident, direct, and not afraid to push for what they want.
So they're the ones who come in with a strong opening offer, ready to play hardball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With assertives, be clear about your boundaries. Stand your ground when necessary. And be prepared for a more competitive negotiation.
You got to show them you're not intimidated and you're willing to walk away if you don't get a fair deal.
That's right. And Voss provides specific tips for handling each of these styles. From building rapport to countering their tactics. It's about adapting your approach based on the personality you're dealing with.
So we've got this whole spectrum of negotiation styles and techniques. From tactical empathy to knowing their religion and handling those tricky black swans. I feel like my negotiation toolbox is overflowing.
It's powerful stuff.
But Voss doesn't stop there.
No, he doesn't.
He dives into this even more intriguing concept of like bending reality in a negotiation.
Bending reality. So Voss challenges us to understand how our perceptions of value and fairness are influenced by factors like anchoring and framing.
Because sometimes we get so focused on like a specific number or outcome that we lose sight of the bigger picture.
The context.
The context of the whole negotiation.
Right. Yeah. And Voss argues that skilled negotiators can actually shape those perceptions.
Interesting.
Bend reality in their favor, not through deception,
but
by strategically using information and language.
So it's not about like lying or tricking anyone. It's about using information and language strategically to influence how the other party sees the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the most powerful tools for bending reality is this idea of anchoring.
Anchoring.
Which is about setting that initial expectation.
Okay.
Voss talks about how really experienced negotiators will often lead with an extreme anchor, like a seemingly ridiculous offer.
Yeah.
To kind of shift the other person's perception of what's possible.
Right. And if you're not prepared for that tactic, it's so easy to get caught up in their frame.
Yeah.
And end up making concessions that you wouldn't have considered otherwise.
Exactly. Voss gives this great example of negotiating a lower price for a group of voice actors.
Okay.
By anchoring their expectations low. He basically told them that the budget was incredibly tight.
Wow.
And they were his last resort.
Oh my gosh.
Which made his actual offer seem much more generous.
It's like he created this perception of scarcity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they were lucky to get any offer at all.
Right.
It's a classic example of bending reality to your advantage.
That's amazing. So anchoring is about setting the stage. But Voss also says it's crucial to let the other person go first whenever possible.
That's right. Let them reveal their hand before you show your own.
Yeah.
This gives you valuable information about their expectations, their bargaining style.
Plus, it prevents you from accidentally anchoring yourself too low.
Exactly. But be prepared for them to throw out a crazy number.
Okay.
And remember, don't flinch.
Don't flinch.
Because if you react emotionally, you've already lost control.
Right.
Voss says it's about keeping your cool and using those tactical empathy skills to figure out what's really behind their offer.
So instead of getting offended, use phrases like, it seems like you're really confident in that number.
I love that.
So you're acknowledging their offer without agreeing to it.
Right.
Which keeps you in the driver's seat.
Exactly. And this leads us to another key distinction that Voss makes.
Okay.
Aim for not just yes in a negotiation.
Wait, what's the difference? I'm always happy with a yes.
So think about it. Someone might say yes just to avoid conflict or because they're not fully engaged.
Right.
But that signals this much deeper level of understanding and commitment.
So it's like they're not just agreeing, but they're actively on the same page.
Yes.
Understanding my perspective.
Exactly. It shows that you've accurately grasped their needs and motivations.
Yeah.
And that builds trust, making a lasting agreement much more likely.
This makes total sense. And this is where Voss's idea of knowing their religion comes in, right?
Right. Remember, it's not about their actual religious beliefs.
Right.
It's about understanding their core values. What truly drives them?
Yeah, understanding their why, what makes them tick.
He gives this amazing example of a hostage situation with a tobacco farmer. And the negotiators realized that his deep distrust of the government was a key factor in his actions.
So instead of threats or logic, they appealed to his sense of independence and his love for his land.
And it worked.
Wow.
It shows that negotiation isn't always about finding this middle ground.
Right.
Sometimes it's about finding those shared values, that deeper connection that allows for a truly collaborative solution.
This has been so eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new playbook for approaching any kind of deal, big or small.
It is powerful stuff. But remember, getting to yes or even that's right is only half the battle.
Right.
Voss emphasizes that even the best agreement is useless if it doesn't actually happen.
Right. You can't just shake hands and walk away. Implementation is key.
He tells this crazy story about a prison siege where they had this whole surrender plan in place.
Yeah.
But a SWAT officer who wasn't in the loop almost ruined everything.
It's a good reminder that even when the main players agree, you need to consider everyone involved.
Yeah.
Every potential roadblock to make sure things actually go smoothly.
And Voss shares this personal anecdote about negotiating a kidnapping in the Ecuadorian jungle.
Okay.
They secured the hostages' release, but almost couldn't deliver the ransom because of all these logistical problems.
Oh my gosh. Even when you think you've won, the details can still trip you up.
It just goes to show.
Voss must have some advice on how to avoid those pitfalls.
He does. He emphasizes asking how questions throughout the process. Not just to gather information, but to ensure that everyone's on the same page about how the deal will actually work in practice.
So things like, how will we ensure this gets done? Or how will we handle potential problems down the line?
Exactly. It shifts the agreement from this static document to this shared roadmap, increasing the likelihood of success.
This deep dive has been incredible. Thank you so much. I'm already thinking about all the ways I can apply these techniques in my own life.
And that's what Voss wants. He believes that these skills aren't just for hostage negotiators.
Right.
They're for anyone who wants to communicate more effectively and navigate the complexities of human interaction.
So whether you're dealing with a tough boss, negotiating a better price, or even just navigating family disagreements, there's something here for everyone.
Think about those how and what questions. Try mirroring someone's language to build rapport.
Yeah.
And most importantly, seek to understand their religion.
Their religion.
What truly matters to them.
Yeah, it's not about manipulation. It's about connection and finding solutions that genuinely work for everyone involved.
Well said. This has been a truly insightful exploration of Voss's work.
Thank you so much for being such a fantastic guide through this material. And to our listener, we hope you found this deep dive valuable. Now go out there and never split the difference, but always negotiate with empathy and skill.